Ladies and gentlemen, family in the faith and seekers of truth, listen to me now and hear me well. We are not just living in uncertain times. We are living in spiritually dangerous times. And the greatest threat to your purpose, your peace, and your destiny is not always a storm from the outside. No, sometimes the most destructive force comes dressed as a friend, cloaked in charm, speaking smooth words, but with a crooked heart. So today, we're not just going to talk, we're going to expose. We're going to uncover how to spot an evil person before they destroy what God is building in you. Because hear me, not everybody smiling at you is for you. Not everyone holding your hand is holding your heart. Some are on assignment, not from heaven, but from hell to sabotage your calling, drain your joy, and keep you circling in confusion. Evil hides in good packaging. One of the most dangerous deceptions you will ever encounter is evil that looks like a blessing. It doesn't come wearing a warning label. It doesn't announce itself with thunder and lightning. It walks in quietly, wearing a smile. It flatters, it blends in, it fits your needs, matches your prayers, and seems like the answer you've been waiting for. That's what makes it so dangerous. Evil doesn't always look evil. In fact, the most effective evil disguises itself as good. The enemy is a master of disguise. He knows how to wear the costume of kindness. He studies you. He knows your pain points, your desires, your fears, and even your history. And when you're not anchored in truth, when your discernment is off, you'll mistake the trap for a breakthrough. You'll invite the enemy in thinking it's a friend. You'll let the wrong person speak into your life because they showed up with the right words but the wrong spirit. You can't always judge a book by its cover, and you certainly can't judge a spirit by its smile. Some of the people who did the most damage to you didn't look dangerous. They were charming, confident, caring, even spiritual, but time exposed what sight couldn't. Time revealed that beneath the polish was poison. That's why you must go deeper than appearances. Discernment isn't about suspicion. It's about revelation. It's about seeing the difference between real light and artificial light, because some people don't carry light. They reflect it. They don't have truth in them. They just mirror what they think you want to see. Evil often mimics the right thing. It's a counterfeit, and just like a counterfeit bill, it feels real until it's tested. The touch may be convincing, the timing might feel perfect, but when pressure comes, when truth is needed, what's fake can't hold up. That's why testing matters. Don't just be impressed by someone's words. Watch their fruit. Look at their trail. What do they leave behind when they walk away? What happens to people after they're done with them? The packaging is designed to disarm you. It's meant to lower your guard. That's why evil often shows up during vulnerable seasons. When you're tired, lonely, desperate for connection, craving validation, evil knows how to package itself in what looks like relief. It knows how to say what you want to hear and give what you think you need. But be careful, because anything that pulls you away from peace, truth, purpose, or God is not a gift. It's a setup. You see, real good doesn't have to manipulate. It doesn't pressure. It doesn't pretend. It's consistent, not just convenient. It brings life, not just attraction. Evil, on the other hand, uses urgency. It creates confusion. It rushes your decisions. It wants access before trust is earned. It bypasses the process so it can quickly plant its seed. People often ask, why didn't I see it? The truth is, you saw the package and trusted it, but wisdom doesn't stop at the wrapper. Wisdom prays, pauses, and pays attention. Evil counts on you being impatient. It counts on you being impressed. It counts on you confusing potential with purpose. But if you slow down, you'll start to see it, the cracks in the character, the contradictions in the story, the little lies that reveal the bigger deception. Because no matter how pretty the packaging, truth eventually exposes what's inside. Evil manipulates emotion. It doesn't always come in loud and aggressive. Sometimes it comes in gentle, calculated waves, pulling at your heartstrings, making you question yourself, making you feel guilty for even protecting your peace. It studies you, learns your emotional triggers, and slowly wraps itself around your sensitivity like a snake around its prey. You don't even realize what's happening at first, because it feels like empathy, like understanding, like connection. But behind the comforting voice is a strategy to control, to distort, to dominate. One of the most dangerous things about emotional manipulation is that it uses your strengths against you. It sees your compassion and turns it into guilt. It sees your desire to help and turns it into obligation. It sees your loyalty and twists it into bondage. Before you know it, you're not responding to truth. You're reacting to pressure. You're not walking in confidence. You're walking on eggshells. You're not choosing freely. You're being emotionally blackmailed into submission. This kind of evil doesn't force you with fists. It uses feelings. It will cry in front of you, break down an apology, say all the right words, and then do the same thing again. It plays the victim, even when it's the villain. It rewrites the story to make you doubt your memory, question your instincts, and believe that you're the problem for setting boundaries. Over time, you start to lose clarity. You don't know what's real. You start thinking, maybe I overreacted. Maybe I'm being too harsh. Maybe I just need to give them another chance. And while you're questioning your instincts, they're planning their next move. Evil thrives when your guard is down. And one of the most effective ways to lower your defenses is through emotional attachment. Evil wants to become a part of your world, not just to enjoy it, but to manipulate it. It wants access to your thoughts, your habits, your decisions. It wants to embed itself so deeply that separating from it feels like you're losing a part of yourself. And that's the trap. The illusion that if you walk away, you're the one doing harm. That's how deep the manipulation goes. You'll notice that emotional manipulators don't take responsibility. They redirect it. When confronted, they don't acknowledge. They accuse. When you express pain, they don't apologize. They defend. They use your own words against you. They keep you in cycles of confusion because confusion is control. If you're always second, guessing yourself, you'll never stand up to them. If you're always trying to make peace, you'll never call out the war they're creating. And make no mistake, it is a war, not with fists, but with feelings, not with weapons, but with words. Manipulators don't need to scream to be dangerous. They just need to make you feel like you owe them your silence. They don't want to solve the issue. They want to stay in control of the narrative, and their tool of choice is your empathy. They tell half, truths that make you doubt the whole truth. They apologize just enough to keep you invested, but never enough to actually change. They bring up your past to silence your present. They pretend to be broken so you'll put down your sword. It's not sincerity. It's strategy. It's not repentance. It's rehearsal. They know exactly how to cry in front of the right people, how to flip the script, how to make you feel like the aggressor for simply standing your ground. The longer you stay connected emotionally, the harder it becomes to see clearly. Your soul gets entangled in their chaos, and your logic gets drowned in their drama. You end up stuck, not because you're weak, but because you're being played, and the longer it goes on, the more drained you become. Emotionally, spiritually, mentally, even physically, you start to feel the weight of carrying something that was never yours to hold. Evil repeats patterns, not mistakes. A mistake is something that happens once and teaches. It brings a pause, a shift, a reflection. A person who makes a mistake feels the weight of it, owns it, and adjusts. But evil doesn't work like that. Evil isn't interested in growth. It's interested in control, manipulation, and advantage. So instead of learning from wrongdoing, it repeats it strategically, intentionally, and without remorse. It doesn't slip, it cycles. It doesn't stumble, it schemes. And when you look closely, the evidence is in the pattern. Patterns reveal character. You can apologize for a moment, but your patterns will preach the truth of your intentions. Evil people may say the right words, cry the right tears, and play the part of the remorseful soul. But if you track their behavior over time, you'll see repetition. They're not sorry they did it. They're sorry they were caught, or sorry they lost access. That's why, once the dust settles, the behavior starts all over again. Maybe the packaging changes, maybe it's quieter. Maybe it's more subtle, but the root remains the same and the cycle continues. You'll notice with evil people, there's a rhythm to their chaos. They love bomb you, then break you. They disappear, then return with grand apologies. They hurt you, then deny it, then blame you for reacting. And then when you begin to pull away, they panic, not out of love, but out of the fear of losing control. So they reset the cycle with charm, promises, and false humility. And unless you recognize the pattern, you'll find yourself right back where you started, hurt, confused, and blaming yourself for trusting again. Evil doesn't care about your forgiveness. It cares about your forgetfulness. It hopes you're so desperate for peace that you'll ignore the warning signs. It hopes your need for resolution will override your memory of reality. It thrives when you see each incident as isolated instead of connected. Because evil knows that if you ever start connecting the dots, you'll stop excusing the behavior. And when you stop excusing it, you'll start escaping it. One of the clearest signs of evil is the refusal to change despite repeated consequences. A person who genuinely wants to do better will be broken by their own wrongdoing. But evil adjusts just enough to stay close. It's like a chameleon. It knows how to blend into whatever environment will give it continued access. It may soften its tone, reword its approach, or delay its tactics, but it does not transform. Because transformation requires truth, and truth requires surrender. Evil won't surrender, it negotiates. It bargains, it delays, but it won't bow. You may find yourself wondering, how many chances should I give? How many times should I extend grace? Grace without boundaries becomes enabling. Mercy without memory becomes foolishness. When the fruit keeps repeating, you are no longer dealing with a mistake. You are dealing with a decision, and decisions are indicators of direction. When someone chooses the same harmful behavior again and again, even after being confronted, corrected, and given space to change, what you're seeing is not an accident. It's a declaration of their character. Evil thrives on your desire to believe the best. It knows you're hopeful. It knows you want to see growth. But hope must be anchored in truth, or it will become the rope that ties you to destruction. You can pray for someone's change, but if they keep showing you their pattern, that's your answer. Words may lie, but consistency never does. A repeated offense is not an unfortunate habit. It's a roadmap to who they really are. And until that pattern is broken at the root, The behavior will always return, often stronger, often sneakier, but always with the same aim: to dominate, disrupt, and devour. Evil hates accountability. It recoils when confronted, deflects when questioned, and disappears when held responsible. Accountability is the mirror evil refuses to look into because it reveals the truth behind the disguise. It forces ownership. It shines a light on actions, decisions, and patterns. And where there is light, deception can no longer hide. Evil can tolerate exposure as long as it controls the narrative. But the moment truth walks in unfiltered, evil panics. Not because it's unaware of what it did, but because accountability threatens its control. You can always tell when someone has no intention of growing by how they respond to correction. A person walking in integrity may not like correction, but they'll receive it. They'll pause, they'll reflect, they'll examine their heart, but evil pushes back, not out of ignorance, but out of pride. It will shift blame, twist facts, and reframe events. It will minimize what happened or maximize what you did in response. Accountability to evil is not just uncomfortable. It's intolerable because it dismantles the illusion. It removes the ability to manipulate from the shadows. Evil plays innocent but despises investigation. It thrives in vagueness, avoids clarity, and uses confusion as a shield. The more unclear the situation, the more power it retains. The moment someone starts asking real questions, connecting the dots, demanding consistency, evil gets restless. It might become defensive, start crying, accuse you of being too harsh, or claim you're attacking its character. It will make accountability feel like cruelty, even when it's offered in love, because accountability threatens the lie that evil has worked so hard to maintain. You'll notice that evil people have an allergy to consequences. They want to offend without repercussion, hurt without confrontation, lie without exposure, and when consequences finally come, they don't repent. They retaliate. They go into damage control. They try to flip the script, discredit the messenger, or play the victim. It's not about learning the lesson. It's about preserving their position. That's why when someone with evil intent gets caught, their focus isn't on the harm they caused. It's on the image they need to protect. Evil's refusal to be held accountable is also seen in its selective memory. When you bring up specific incidents, suddenly they don't remember. When you quote their own words, suddenly you're being too sensitive. When you ask for clarity, you're accused of being combative. It's all an attempt to destabilize you emotionally so that you second guess your perception. The goal is not truth. The goal is control, and accountability puts that control at risk. In environments where accountability is absent, evil flourishes. That's why evil surrounds itself with enablers. People who will look the other way, excuse bad behavior, spiritualize dysfunction, or say, "That's just how they are." It builds alliances with those who fear confrontation or crave approval. It manipulates authority structures, plays politics, and cultivates silence. Because silence is protection, and protection is power, but accountability disrupts that power. It forces alignment between behavior and responsibility. It exposes the gap between image and integrity. It holds up the mirror and says, "You did this, you caused this, you chose this." And evil can't stand that. It would rather burn a bridge than build a boundary. It would rather lose you than lose control over you. That's why the moment you start setting expectations, asking questions, or calling out inconsistencies, Evil shows its true face. It gets louder, angrier, more manipulative, or more passive-aggressive. What you begin to realize is that the person wasn't confused. They were calculating. They weren't misunderstood. They were avoiding accountability, and the more you try to reason with them, the more they twist the truth. Because accountability demands maturity, humility, and honesty, and evil lacks all three. It wants power without principle, relationship without responsibility, influence without integrity. Evil attacks your identity. It doesn't just want to hurt you. It wants to redefine you. It wants to chip away at who you are, distort how you see yourself, and disconnect you from the truth of your value. Evil's strategy isn't just external damage, it's internal erosion. Because if it can plant a lie deep enough in your soul, you'll begin to live from it. You'll stop walking in confidence, stop trusting your discernment, and start filtering your decisions through insecurity and fear. That's the real agenda, not just to control your environment, but to rewrite your identity from the inside out. It starts subtly. Evil doesn't always come with a full frontal assault on your character. It begins with small suggestions, subtle criticisms, questions that make you doubt what you used to know. You speak up, and it tells you you're being too much. You set a boundary, and it calls you selfish. You seek clarity, and it labels you difficult. Over time, those messages become internalized. You begin to question whether your strength is actually pride, whether your discernment is really judgment, whether your boundaries are just barriers to love. That's the work of evil. It reverses the truth until you lose sight of who you were before it entered your life. The more entangled you become, the more distorted yourself you becomes. You're constantly walking on emotional tightropes, adjusting yourself to avoid conflict, making yourself smaller to stay acceptable. You downplay your success so they feel secure. You silence your voice so they don't get triggered. You give up pieces of yourself, one compromise at a time, thinking it's peacekeeping, but really it's identity erosion. And before long, you can't even remember the sound of your own confidence. That's exactly where evil wants you, silent, unsure, and dependent. Evil knows that if it can fracture your identity, it can fracture your destiny, because your identity is the foundation of every choice you make. How you see yourself determines what you tolerate, who you allow in, what dreams you pursue, and how firmly you stand when things get hard. So if evil can convince you that you're unworthy, unlovable, not enough, or too much, it can keep you locked in places you were never meant to stay. You'll tolerate abuse disguised as love, manipulation disguised as leadership, and chaos disguised as passion. And all the while you'll think it's your fault for not being better, stronger, or more forgiving. This attack on identity doesn't always come through words. Sometimes it's in how they treat you, the disregard, the dismissal, the dehumanization. It all speaks loudly, even in silence. It tells you that you don't matter, that your needs are too much, that your feelings are invalid. Evil will applaud your silence and punish your truth. It will reward your submission and resist your healing. Because the stronger you get, the less control it has. The clearer you become, the harder you are to deceive. And so it wages war not just on your behavior, but on your being. Over time, you start to adapt to the dysfunction. You shift to survive. You bury your opinions second. Guess your instincts and let someone else's version of you become your truth. That's not just manipulation. That's identity theft. And it's not accidental. It's intentional. Evil does not want you empowered. It wants you dependent. It wants you insecure because insecurity can be controlled. It wants you doubtful because doubt can be redirected. It wants you broken because broken people are easier to dominate. The greatest threat to evil is a person who remembers who they are. A person who wakes up to the lies, reconnects with their worth, and reclaims their voice becomes a danger to every structure built on control. Because once you remember your identity, you stop settling, you stop shrinking, you stop tolerating half-truths, fake apologies, and conditional love. You start moving in clarity, standing in truth, and walking in power. Evil thrives where discernment is absent. It doesn't need full access right away. It just needs you to stop paying attention. It waits for the moment when your spirit grows dull, when your standards start to loosen, when your need for affirmation overrides your need for truth. That's where evil makes its entrance, not through the front door, but through the cracks in your discernment. It feeds on distraction, emotional instability, spiritual immaturity, and relational confusion. When discernment is weak, perception becomes cloudy. You see what you want instead of what's real. You hear what sounds good instead of what's right. Discernment is not suspicion. It's not paranoia. It's not cynicism. Discernment is the spiritual ability to see beyond the surface, to recognize the spirit behind the smile, the intention behind the invitation, the motive behind the words. It's not about judging people harshly. It's about judging situations wisely. And when that gift goes unused, when it's dismissed in favor of comfort or appearances, evil gets a foothold. Evil doesn't need an invitation. It just needs you to stop asking questions, to stop praying for clarity, to stop trusting that small check in your spirit that tells you something is off. There's a cost to ignoring that inner warning. When you bypass discernment, you enter into relationships, agreements, environments, and partnerships that look right, but are rooted in deception. And deception doesn't always look like danger. It often looks like delight. It feels exciting. It feels destined. But feelings lie. Energy can be misleading. Not every connection is divine, and not every open door is God sent. That's why discernment is critical, because evil can perform. It can imitate peace. It can mimic love. It can speak the language of your desire and reflect your dreams right back to you, all while working to sabotage your purpose behind the scenes. Evil loves when you operate in emotion without discernment. It counts on you being impulsive. It relies on you being desperate for connection, vulnerable from past pain, or too trusting of appearances. Discernment is what keeps you anchored when your heart wants to run ahead of your spirit. It's what causes you to pause before saying yes, to watch fruit instead of just hearing words, to notice how someone treats people they don't need, to ask who are they when no one's watching. Evil avoids places where that kind of questioning is active, because where discernment lives, deception dies. When discernment is absent, evil thrives in leadership, in romance, in friendship, even in spiritual communities. It hides behind charisma. It camouflages with charm. It cloaks itself in credentials. That's why you can't be led by external metrics. How someone looks, what they say, what they've accomplished. You have to go deeper. What's the spirit behind what they're saying? What's the fruit of their influence? Discernment isn't just about hearing the truth. It's about recognizing the counterfeit. Because not everything that says the right thing is coming from the right place. You'll often find that when discernment is turned off, evil doesn't even have to work that hard. It can sit comfortably in your space, whispering lies, stirring confusion, feeding insecurity, and go completely undetected. It's not that it's powerful, it's that it's strategic. It knows how to disguise itself until it becomes embedded in your routine. Discernment interrupts that process. It calls out what others ignore. It sets boundaries that others are too afraid to set. It holds a standard, not out of pride, but out of protection. When discernment is present, you don't need 10 signs. You don't need chaos to break out. You don't need exposure to believe your instincts. You trust what your spirit already knows. Evil fears that kind of clarity. It fears people who don't fall for the show, who aren't impressed by surface, who ask questions others are afraid to ask. Because discernment cuts through performance. It silences confusion. It reveals intentions. It protects peace.